My daughter-in-law posted the engagement ring on Facebook before my son ever told me he was getting married. I found out scrolling through my phone at the kitchen table, alone, the way I find out most things about his life now. The next morning, I called my lawyer and took my name off the line of credit that was paying for half his mortgage. I'm 66 years old. I spent 31 years working the rigs out of Fort McMurray, then another 9 driving long haul before my knees gave out, and I had to sit still for the first time in my life. My name is George. I live alone now in a bungalow outside Red Deer, the kind of house where the silence has its own weight in the evenings. My son's name is Mitchell. He's 34. His mother, my wife, passed 6 years ago. Ovarian cancer, fast and ugly. The kind that doesn't give you time to say the things you meant to say. After she died, Mitchell was all I had left that felt like family. My own brother and I haven't spoken in years over something so small now I can barely remember what it was. So when Carol died, it was just me and Mitchell. 2 men who didn't know how to talk about grief, eating takeout in a kitchen that still smelled like her hand cream for months. I co-signed his mortgage 4 years ago when he and his girlfriend at the time, different girlfriend, not the one we're talking about, wanted to buy a townhouse in Edmonton. That fell through when they split, and Mitchell needed cash to buy her out of her half. I didn't think twice. I'd just gotten Carol's life insurance payout, and what was I going to do with it? Buy myself a boat? I put $80,000 into that house and co-signed the line of credit so he could finish the basement and put in a new furnace before winter. He told me at the time, "Dad, I'll never forget this." I believed him. I still believe he meant it in the moment. A year later, he met Vanessa at a work conference in Calgary. He brought her around exactly twice. Once for a barbecue where she spent most of the afternoon on her phone, and once at Christmas where she gave me a candle as a gift and asked me, not unkindly but not warmly either, whether I'd thought up downsizing now that it was just me in a 4-bedroom house. I told her I liked my space. She smiled the way people smile when they've already decided you're not worth arguing with. After that, the calls from Mitchell got shorter. Sundays used to be our day. He'd come by, we'd watch the Oilers lose, I'd make him the spaghetti his mother used to make, badly, but he ate it anyway and never complained. Then it became every other Sunday, then once a month, then a text instead of a call, "Busy week, Dad, talk soon." I told myself this was normal. Sons grow up, they build their own lives. I'd done the same thing to my own father once, hadn't I? Back when I was young and stupid and thought time was a thing you had unlimited amounts of. What I didn't expect was to find out he was engaged from a Facebook post. It was a Tuesday night in March. Still cold enough here that the truck takes a good 10 minutes to warm up before you can feel your fingers on the wheel. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea going lukewarm beside me, scrolling because there was nothing on TV and the house was too quiet to just sit in. And there it was. A photo of Vanessa's hand, a ring on it, diamond catching the light from what looked like a restaurant window. The caption reading, he finally asked, "Tagged location, some steakhouse downtown." 43 comments already. Friends I didn't recognize congratulating her, asking about the date, asking who designed the ring. I read it 3 times before it made sense. My son was engaged. My son was engaged, and I knew about it the same way 300 strangers knew about it, by scrolling past it on a Tuesday night. I didn't call him right away. I sat there with my tea gone cold, and I scrolled through the comments looking for his name, looking for anything that told me he'd thought of me at all in that moment. There was one comment from him, 2 days old. "So lucky to have found you." That was it. That was the whole of what my son had to say about asking a woman to marry him, and not one word to his father. I thought about all the things a man is supposed to do before he proposes. Ask the father for his blessing. People still say that, even if it's old-fashioned. I didn't need the ceremony of it. I just wanted to have known before the internet did. I called him the next afternoon, kept my voice level, the way I learned to keep it level on the rigs when something went wrong, and panicking only made it worse. "Saw the good news on Facebook," I said. "Congratulations." There was a pause, long enough that I knew he understood exactly what he'd done. "Yeah," he said. "Sorry, Dad, it's been crazy. We were going to call you this weekend." This weekend. As if there was a queue, and I was somewhere near the back of it, behind the Facebook friends, behind the coworkers, behind whoever liked the post first. I didn't say anything about being hurt. Men like me weren't raised to say a sentence like that out loud. You bury it, you let it sit in your chest like a stone you carry without mentioning the weight. I just said, "That's great, son. Let me know if you need anything." And we hung up, and I sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside, because I didn't trust my face yet. For the next 2 months, I told myself it didn't matter. I went to the engagement dinner when they finally invited me. 3 weeks later, at a restaurant I had to drive 40 minutes to reach, where Vanessa's parents sat at the head of the table like they owned the room, and Vanessa's father gave a toast about welcoming a wonderful new addition to their family, and never once mentioned mine. I sat near the end of the table next to a cousin of Vanessa's I'd never met. who spent the meal talking about her ski trip to Whistler. Mitchell came by my chair once that night, put a hand on my shoulder, said, "Glad you came, Dad." Like I was a guest he was relieved had shown up rather than the man who'd put $80,000 and his own name on the house his fiancée was about to move into. The wedding planning happened entirely without me. I heard about the venue from a Christmas card Vanessa's mother sent, a save-the-date really, dressed up as a card. I heard about the dress from a photo Vanessa posted, her in white in some boutique, captioned "Found the one." I started to understand that I had become something like an interested bystander in my own son's life. A man who got his information the way the rest of the world did, through a screen, after the fact, secondhand. What finally broke something in me wasn't even the wedding itself. It was Vanessa's mother. Her name is Patricia, and at some family gathering, Mitchell's birthday, which I drove an hour and a half to attend and stayed for 90 minutes, because that was apparently the window I'd been allotted, Patricia cornered me near the dessert table and asked, in the tone of someone making polite conversation about the weather, whether I'd thought about what you'll be contributing for the wedding. Not asking if I wanted to contribute. Asking what I'd be contributing like it was already a line item somewhere, already discussed, already decided, and I was simply the last to be informed of my own role. I said I'd have to think about it. She smiled, said of course, no pressure, in the voice people use when there is entirely pressure, and walked off to find her husband. I drove home that night and didn't sleep. I lay in the bed, Carol, and I had shared for 28 years, and stared at the ceiling, and thought about every Sunday I'd spent alone, since Mitchell started disappearing into this new life of his. I thought about the $80,000. I thought about co-signing a line of credit for a house I'd never been invited back to since the basement renovation, a house I'd helped pay for that I now needed 40 minutes notice and an invitation to enter. I thought about Carol, too, and what she would have said. She was kinder than me, gentler, the one who always found Mitchell's excuses before he had to make them. But even she, I think, would have drawn a line somewhere. She used to say, "George, you can love someone and still expect to be treated like a person." I'd forgotten that for a long time. That night I remembered it clear as anything. In the morning I called Frank Delisle, my lawyer, a man I'd known since we played beer league hockey together 20 years ago. I told him I wanted to look at the line of credit on Mitchell's house, the one with my name on it. Frank pulled the documents and called me back within the hour. As it turned out, because I was a cosigner and not just a guarantor, I had more leverage than I'd realized. The line of credit had an annual review clause. I could request to be removed from it, which, if Mitchell couldn't qualify on his income alone, and Frank suspected he couldn't, not with Vanessa carrying student debt from her master's degree, would force a renegotiation of the whole loan. It wouldn't take the house from him, but it would mean the bank coming back to him with new terms, probably a higher rate, possibly a demand that he find another cosigner or refinance entirely, and fast before the existing line came up for its annual review in 6 weeks. I told Frank to start the paperwork. It wasn't revenge, not the way Vanessa's family would probably tell it later, painting me as some bitter old man punishing his son for getting married. I want to be honest about what it was. It was the only language I had left that I thought my son might actually hear. I had tried being patient. I had tried being understanding, telling myself sons get busy, sons build their own lives, that's how it's supposed to go. But somewhere along the way, patience had curdled into something that let people just keep taking, keep forgetting, keep assuming I'd always be there in the background, paying for things, and showing up when summoned and saying nothing when I wasn't. The letter went out from the bank 2 weeks before the wedding. Mitchell called me the night he got it, and for the first time in over a year, I heard real fear in his voice instead of the polite distance he'd been giving me. "Dad, what is this? Did you do this?" I told him the truth. I told him I'd requested to be removed as cosigner, that it was well within my rights, and that the timing was simply when the paperwork happened to clear. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're doing this now? 3 weeks before my wedding?" And something in me, something that had been folded up small and quiet for over a year, finally stood up straight. I said, "Son, I found out about your engagement on Facebook. I found out about your venue from your mother-in-law's Christmas card. I get 90 minutes at your birthday party and an instruction on what I'll be contributing to your wedding, like I'm a vendor you're managing. You didn't think of me as your father this whole year. You thought of me as a line of credit with a pulse. So forgive me if I finally started acting like exactly that." He didn't have anything to say to that. I could hear him breathing on the other end, and I thought, for one foolish second, that maybe this was the moment he'd finally understand, finally say the thing I'd been waiting over a year to hear. He didn't. He just said, "This is unbelievable," and hung up. The wedding happened without me. I wasn't formally uninvited. Nobody had the nerve for that. But I received what I can only describe as a logistical update 2 days before. A text saying the seating chart was already finalized and they'd figure something out if I still wanted to come. I didn't go. I sat in my own kitchen that Saturday afternoon, made myself a coffee, and didn't check Facebook once. 3 months have passed since then. Mitchell refinanced the line of credit on his own. A higher rate, Frank tells me. But he managed it, found a way, the way people do when they have to. We haven't spoken since the wedding, not really. Just a stiff text exchange around Father's Day that neither of us pushed any further. I don't know if my son hates me now. I think some part of him might, at least for a while. I've made my peace with the possibility that this is simply the cost of the thing I did. I've thought a great deal these past months about whether I did the right thing, sitting alone in this bungalow with the radio on for company. I keep landing in the same place. I'm not proud of how it felt to make that call to Frank. There was no triumph in it, no satisfaction. Just a kind of tired resolve, like setting down a weight I'd been carrying so long my arms had gone numb to it. But I'm not ashamed of it either. For 31 years on the rigs, I learned that the men who survive aren't the ones who never get hurt. They're the ones who know when to stop absorbing the hit and start protecting themselves. I gave my son a house. I gave him my name on a piece of paper that made his life easier for 4 years running. What I never got, not once in all that time, was the simple decency of being told things before I read them on a screen meant for strangers. A man can love his child and still refuse to be treated like an afterthought in his own family. I learned that lesson late, and it cost me something I don't know if I'll ever fully get back. But I'd rather carry the cost of having stood up for myself than the cost of having disappeared quietly into the role of a man who simply paid the bills and asked nothing in return. Because that man, the one I used to be, was already disappearing a little more every Sunday that didn't come.